When people have to rebuild their life, career, or income, they usually make the same mistake at the beginning. They focus on the visible things first. They think about branding, content, websites, followers, maybe even passive income. But the women who rebuild fastest almost never start there. They start by getting honest. They get clear before they try to get impressive. That matters because rebuilding does not usually begin in a dramatic movie moment. It begins quietly. It begins when someone realizes that the life they have built is functional, but no longer fully theirs. On paper, things may look acceptable. They are working, coping, handling responsibilities, doing what is expected. But underneath that, there is often a kind of pressure that keeps growing. The feeling of being stretched thin, the sense that everything depends on them, the frustration of doing so much and still feeling far away from freedom. And that is usually the true starting point. Not confidence, not inspiration, clarity. Because once you start studying how people actually rebuild, one pattern appears again and again. The people who make the strongest comeback are not always the most motivated. They are the ones who stop avoiding the facts. They stop asking what sounds exciting and start asking what is structurally true. Where is my energy going? Where is my money going? What is draining me every week? What am I doing that looks productive but changes nothing? That is why the first phase is not growth, it is diagnosis. It is figuring out what is real. What skills already exist? What strengths are already there? What problems have already been solved in work or in life? What did people already trust this person for? Rebuilding becomes much faster when it starts from existing proof instead of fantasy. And from there, another pattern shows up. Real businesses do not begin with broad inspiration. They begin with specificity. One type of person, one painful problem, one useful direction. The more vague the idea, the slower the progress. But when someone can clearly say, these are the people, this is the pain, and this is the result they care about, momentum becomes possible. This is the part most people underestimate. They think choosing a niche is restrictive. In reality, it is what creates power, because until the message becomes specific, the offer stays blurry, and blurry businesses rarely grow. So the first shift is simple, but not easy. Stop trying to look ready. Start trying to see clearly. The women who rebuild fastest do not begin by building everything. They begin by identifying where value already exists and where it can solve a real problem. That is what turns vague ambition into a real starting point. And without that starting point, everything else becomes noise. Once people have some clarity, they often move too quickly into building. They create the product, outline the course, design the workbook, film the videos, set up the platform, and convince themselves that all of this activity means the business is moving. But when you look closely at why early businesses fail, the same reason appears again and again. They built something before confirming that anybody truly wanted it. That is why the next phase is validation, and it is where the serious separation happens. The people who stay stuck usually build in private for too long. The people who gain traction start testing early. They understand that an offer is not the same thing as a finished product. A product is the material itself. The modules, the templates, the service details, the curriculum, the mechanics. But the offer is what makes somebody care. It is the promise, the problem, the plan, and the reason this matters now. That distinction changes everything. Because buyers do not wake up hoping to purchase more information. They want a believable path out of frustration. They want less confusion, not more content. They want a result that feels relevant, specific, and worth paying for. This is why the strongest offers tend to follow the same basic pattern. There is a clear person at the center, a clear pain point, a clear promise, A simple plan that explains how the transformation happens. And only after those pieces make sense does the product itself matter. Most beginners reverse that order. They obsess over what is inside before proving that anyone cares about the outside. Then comes the part people avoid because it feels vulnerable. Real conversations, discovery calls, market research, free coaching sessions, direct sales calls, different formats, same purpose. Stop guessing and start listening. What language does the market use? What pain feels urgent? What have they already tried? What do they actually value enough to pay for? When people start doing this, something important happens. Their original idea changes. The wording gets sharper. The promise becomes cleaner. The message sounds more human and less theoretical. And that is a good sign, because no offer stays perfect after first contact with real people. This stage is uncomfortable for a reason. It removes illusion, but it also creates evidence. One honest conversation can teach more than 10 hours of isolated planning. One real objection can reveal exactly what is unclear. One sale can prove that the business belongs in the real world and not just in a notebook. So the women who build faster are usually not the ones with the prettiest first idea. They're the ones willing to refine it in public. They let the market shape the offer instead of protecting the offer from the market. That is where a business starts becoming real. Once there's proof that the offer is wanted, the next pattern becomes very clear. The businesses that grow do not usually explode because of complexity. They grow because of repetition. One validated offer, one audience, one channel that brings conversations. One system that keeps producing results. That is how momentum starts. This is where many people get distracted. They see a little traction and immediately start thinking bigger in the wrong way. More products, more platforms, more ideas, more offers, more moving parts. But when you study the businesses that become stable, the path is usually much less chaotic. They do not scale confusion. They repeat what already works until it becomes reliable. And that matters because momentum is not just about revenue. It is about identity. At this stage, people stop feeling like someone who is trying to start a business and start becoming someone who knows how to solve a valuable problem on purpose. Their confidence rises because their competence rises. Their message improves because they have heard the same pain points enough times to speak about them with precision. Their content gets stronger because it is rooted in real conversations, not random inspiration. Another pattern also shows up here. The strongest builders do not obsess over passive income too early. They focus on active income first. They understand that when someone is rebuilding, cash flow creates breathing room. Breathing room creates better decisions. Better decisions create stronger systems, and stronger systems eventually create freedom. That order is incredibly important. Too many people chase the appearance of success before they have the structure for it. They want digital products before demand, automation before income, scale before stability. But the businesses that last are usually built in layers. First, clarity. Then validation. Then momentum. Then leverage. Not all at once. This is also why lifestyle inflation becomes such a quiet danger. As soon as money starts coming in, many people raise their expenses before they raise their security. From the outside, it looks like progress, but underneath, pressure returns. The businesses that create real freedom tend to avoid that trap. They use early revenue to strengthen the foundation, not just upgrade the image. So the larger lesson is this: rebuilding is rarely a matter of motivation alone. It is a matter of sequence. The women who rebuild fastest tend to respect the order. They identify the real problem. They test the offer early. They learn from the market. They repeat what works. They protect their margin. And over time, what once felt fragile starts to feel dependable. That is when a business stops being an idea and starts becoming an asset, not because it was built dramatically, but because it was built in the right order. And in the long run, that order is often the difference between temporary excitement and true freedom. Please subscribe for more videos that help you learn better, think deeper, and grow with confidence. Watch the next video on screen to keep the momentum going, and explore the playlist for more simple ideas that can genuinely change the way you live and learn.